Thank you to everyone in the audience for joining us today. Today, we will be speaking with Sanjay Shah. He is a senior IT audit consultant for one of the largest bank groups in the Middle East, Emirates NBD. So thank you so much for joining us, Sanjay. Um, Today, we're going to discuss several topics. We're going to have an intriguing discussion about change management, cybersecurity, and maybe even a little compliance. However, to kick things off, and so our audience can get to know you a little bit better, can you tell us a few things about yourself and your background?
First of all, thank you very much, Robert, to give me this opportunity to speak about my favorite subject, change management. And I'm very sure that with my experience, whatever I have learned on the job. So my name is first to give me brief about myself. My name is Sanjay Shah. I'm a finance graduate with a diploma in banking from Indian Institute of Bankers. I have a 40 plus years of financial service industry experience and working with many global multinational banks in various roles, which are spread across, like I started my career with customer service executive, first in 1980. And then I have worked in a back office, foreign exchange back office, treasury back office, you call it. Then I worked in a finance department and Swift operation, data center operation, IT service delivery, IT service management, information access management, information security. And currently I'm working as a senior manager, cybersecurity and information systems in a bank in Sharjah, leading bank in Sharjah. So other than my bachelor degree, I have done various security and audit and control related certification like CISA, CISM, CISSP, CRISC, CGATE, and project management plus ITIL framework, ITIL 2, ITIL 3, and ISO 27000 certifications. And I always believe that learning never stops. This IT environment is very dynamic. It's keep on changing. So you have to keep up the pace with new technologies coming, new risks, new threats, new vulnerabilities, new tools, new technologies. So that is about my brief experience. And
Amazing. I really do think you embrace the concept of lifelong learning. I think in our last conversation, you mentioned to me that you're actually working on your cloud technology certifications. Is that correct?
yes,
See, that's
for my
amazing.
CSP certification on cloud. Yeah.
Very good. Well, let's talk a little bit about change management. How do you define change management, at least in the context of IT security? And why do you feel that change management is so essential for protecting an organization?
Uh, yeah, so for change management, as we all know, that only thing is constant is a change. For IT environment is very getting very complex, very dynamic, and new threats, new vulnerabilities are every day we find that new threats, new vulnerabilities, and new risk are emerging risk are coming. So for organization to protect their data, they need to look at the three core aspects of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So in that respect, change management is very important because in change management in IT security perspective is every change organization log, it has a new risk, it has a impact on their confidentiality, integrity, and availability. If these three aspects in change management, if not assessed properly before implementing the change, then there will be a serious impact to the organization. So when new change, if there is a new change is to be implemented at that time, it is change management process. They have to make sure that there's properly changes, impact assessment is done. There's a rollback plan for the changes done. Then various stakeholders who are impacted with that change, they are involved in that. They write their expectation. What is the change? Details are there. Change is going to impact what infrastructure, what server, what application, how it is going to, what are the risks relating to change. So everything should be properly documented. And from security perspective, how confidentiality, integrity, and availability will be impacted. So it's various approvals and various assessment and risk is to be assessed and various. It's a more of the collaborating with all the team and making sure that the change is implemented as intended without any risk. In case if change fails, there is a proper rollback plan is there, so they can roll out the change immediately. And there is no impact on confidentiality, integrity, and availability for the organization.
Got it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So you're saying that change management essentially intersects with the C, the I, and the A of that CIA triad.
Yeah.
So that's a very interesting thought. It makes a lot of sense. I think that's something our audience should really consider. What role do you think that change management plays in an organization's security strategy? And I think you've hinted to that in terms of the CIA triad, and or compliance with various security standards and regulations, whether it's NIST here in the US or ISO 27001, SAMA, DORA, SWIFT, others. What are your thoughts in terms of how change management intersects with those objectives?
Yeah, if you look at all the regulations, there are so many regulations. Like some of the example is NIST, ISO 27001. Then we have a UAE in Dubai. We have a UAE IA internal IA assurance standard. PCI DSS and SWIFT or whatever standard you call it. There is always, they have a one control is that there's a proper change management process is in place. Change management policy is there. Proper changes are controlled properly. And there's adequate backout plan is there, and integrate confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the information, data, and system is maintained. So if you find, and every most of the regulations, there is a control relating to change. So that is why it is very important. We come for all the audits we get. Change is access control and change. These are the two areas which are being on high priority of all the audits, and all the regulators.
Very good. So another foundational element, basically, every single compliancy out there or regulatory standard all seems to have change management as one of those core controls.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm seeing a theme here in terms of the foundational, how foundational change management is, whether in the CIA triad or in terms of compliancy. Speaking of effectiveness, what measures or indicators do you use to determine whether change management is truly strengthening your security posture?
Yeah, looking at the key performance indicator, I will say there are certain parameters when we can check this, how many number of unauthorized changes are implemented. Then we can say number of high impact service requests which are implemented without a proper change request. Then we can say how many percentage of change were backed out. Backed out means rolled back. Then what is the change acceptance rate? Then there's one parameter, schedule variance. There is certain change is scheduled on particular time, but it is got delayed or it is not implemented as per the schedule. Then after implementing the change, how many number of incidents have occurred? because sometime after a change is implemented, all of a sudden the incident started pouring because of some problem or some incidents, and percentage of change is completed on time. So these are the various parameter we check to measure the effectiveness of change management process.
Understood. Very good. And you mentioned sometimes you have to roll back changes and take other actions. It's true. In security, sometimes we face situations that require immediate action. How do you approach emergency changes while maintaining that integrity in your security process and ensure that folks aren't using that as an opportunity to violate that change management process uh, in an uncontrolled or unmanaged fashion?
Uh, uh, Emergency changes are inevitable. You cannot avoid that. So emergency changes, all the organization, they face these challenges. Sometimes some incident happen, they have to make emergency changes. So implementing emergency changes, that doesn't mean that you don't follow the process. Only thing that you have to expedite the process of change management. You have to take necessary approvals. You have to make sure that you have a rollback plan, and you have a proper communication, coordination, and it's a teamwork is going on, and get senior management involved in the process, and make sure that when you implement, you test, implement, and when you have to update the senior management, all the people, senior stakeholder, regularly about that status of that change of emergency change. So emergency change is you have to follow the process, but you have to expedite that and make sure that you have a necessary approval, necessary documentation, because it is very important to have a necessary approval documentation, that you have to obtain the approval, because if you don't take proper approval, and if there is a change doesn't change fails or it's not implemented as intended, then there can be a huge business impact, and that time
Right.
it impacts the availability, confidentiality, integrity, and can have a reputation loss for the organization. So we have to make proper precautions, processes, approvals, documentation, and communication, and you make sure that after implementation, you lesson learned document also you prepare.
Makes sense. Now, could you share your experience with any automated tools in change management? Well, what approaches have you found most effective? You mentioned your background in ITSM and others. What have you seen that's actually worked in organizations?
I just wanted to clarify one point. There's one point of automated tool, FIM tool, file integrity management tool, and one is the change management tool.
Okay.
So what you're speaking about change management tools, or you're speaking about file integrity management tool?
I'm talking about change management.
Yeah. So change management tool, I have worked with various tool like BMC Remedy, then uh, Manage Engine, and some other IT and ITSM service management tool. These tools are all workflow based tools. So you prepare a workflow that as per the workflow, when you log a change. So from logging the change to the till change is implemented and post implementation review done and change is closed. So everything is in a built-in workflow. So every stakeholder has to involve. So when a change analyst log a change into the system, then he does the impact analysis, then he gather the information, Then he update do the assessment. He involve the respective team, get the details, get the feedback. Then he schedule a change. He take necessary approval, schedule a change. Then change is implemented. Then it passes through various stakeholders like security. Security is one of the key stakeholder in change management process. They have to look at the security impact. If there is a privilege access required to implement that change, then it goes to the implementer of the change. They implement the change, and they stakeholder, the final beneficiary of the change, verify that change is implemented proper. So it's all workflow based process management, change management tool. So I have worked in various tools, but it is in my view, you have the best of the tools, best of the technology, and best of the processes. But if you don't have the trained people and motivated people, so I see that people risk is the highest, and you need to have a mature processes to manage, because best of the tool will not give you the result if it is not uh, supported by robust processes and trained people. So this is I've seen. So as if you have a best tool and if not configured properly, then it will not give you the proper result. But if you have a mediocre tool, but if you build the processes, properly train people, so and nowadays what I see that most of the tools, they are trying to give you too many features, and you see the most of the features are not being used. It's a good to have, but
Right.
it's like Microsoft Excel. You have Excel is so powerful tool. But if I ask my colleague, or I have asked many people, how much percentage of Excel's capability you're using? So hardly people use 15 to 20% of its capability. Same
That's
with
right.
mobile. We have the best of the mobile with many features, but we don't know how to use. We don't use it. So that is what. So I believe that it's a usability is more important. Security and usability. It's you have to have a balance between that. So you give the key features, which are a main feature which required for the tool, and make sure that it's easy to use and it is as it's easy to implement. So that I can say about the change management tools. Automated, it can be automated. It can always automated tool need to have some manual intervention. So, but
Sure.
it's automated processes will have a less failure rate
Right.
once you configure it properly.
Good advice. Security and usability, top of the list, top priority. And it's also interesting. You can have the best tools in place, but ultimately people can be the largest problem that you have. Um,
Awareness, training, motivated people, and that's the key.
yeah.
And
So
I've realized, sorry, I've realized that uh, many of the organization, they have spent a lot of money in a nice tool. Okay, but then it is being not being utilized, and then they don't get the return of investment on that tool. They cannot get the benefit out of that tool, however good tool is.
thank you. Well, you brought up FIM tools. I have a question regarding FIM, file integrity monitoring or system integrity monitoring. Based on your background, do you view them primarily through a security lens, or do you look at them through a compliance lens? And then furthermore, what do you think has prevented integrity monitoring from reaching its fullest potential throughout enterprises?
I think integrating monitoring tool is serve both the purpose. It's a security purpose also, and compliance purpose also. Now, challenges with integrity monitoring tool is I think that most important challenge is to one should know that what are the key things you wanted to check, So you have to take a risk-based approach, looking at the compliance requirement. First, compliance requirement are mandatory. So when you
Right.
configuring the FEM tool, you have to make sure that you know what you want, you know what to protect. So then you can avoid the false positive or a lot of noise. So it's very important to make sure that you are very clear of what you want to monitor, and this need to be fine tuned for customize and fine tune based on the requirement of the organization. What are the regulatory requirement? What are the risks they are facing? What are the I mean, so you always take a risk based approach. So you know which are your high risk area. So because you use a 80-20 rule, Pareto rule, when 20% of your infrastructure is giving means posing a high risk, 80% of the risk. So you focus on that 20%, look at the regulatory requirement and prioritize the assets and prioritize the thing you want to monitor, and you want to check the changes into that area. So I suggest that proper configuration and proper planning and taking a risk-based approach. And most of the time, I've seen that uh, tools vendor who support that tool, they initially they support and this thing, but after some point of time, the organization has to make sure that that handover to the organization is happening properly, and they are trained and they use it properly, because vendor take a lot of effort into implementation of that tool initially, but after that, organization have to make sure that they have the training and that knowledge transfer, and uh, maintain that tool regular. Of course, you can provide the maintenance, maintenance or support for certain period of time based on your contract. But it is for organization to make sure that they make use of that tool properly. First of all, they need to know what they want. If they are clear what they want, they buy the right tool. And when they buy the right tool, then they have to make sure that they configure it properly, they use it properly, and they adopt a risk-based approach. So that will
Right.
give them the maximum return of investment.
That makes sense. Identifying your scope, taking a risk-based approach, and then
Yeah.
based on your comments, it sounds like that usability that you described a couple questions ago, that's incredibly important because ultimately ownership belongs with the customer, with that enterprise, and they need to be able to use the tool effectively.
Yeah. And then if they take the ownership, implement it properly, then they get the best return of investment. Otherwise, they will blame that this tool is not good. We have spent so much of money, and it's very easy to blame the vendor.
That's
But
right.
if you don't know what you want, you don't get what you want.
That's
So
right.
you should know what is your requirement, you buy a suit which based on your requirement, not based on what is available in the market.
Very true. Very true. Let's talk about system resiliency.
Yeah.
Rollback plans are fundamental to change management in any IT environment.
Correct.
Can you explain how you view the role of rollback plans and ability to roll back in maintaining system integrity?
Rollback plan is, as you mentioned, is very important, because if change fail or anything happens, you have to make sure that you roll back it to the previous state, and there is no impact. So sometime when the rollback plan is not done properly, so you have a double impact, because if rollback is not done properly, tested and implemented, then you have a more issues. So uh, you have to make sure that when rollback is, you have proper version control, and what are the backup taken before the to implement the change, or your plan is properly documented, it is tested. Because if you make some changes and you're not able to roll back it properly, then it creates a integrity issue, data integrity issue. If uh, you have a huge customer impact, if it's a financial industry, if it is a healthcare industry, then you have a more high risk issue because you are dealing with the patient's information. So you have to very careful in rollbacks, implementing any change. You have to make sure that you have proper rollback plan documented. It is tested. You have backups are regularly tested, or whatever your plan is properly documented, updated, reviewed, approved. So otherwise, organization can face a lot of impact, customer impact, regulatory impact, financial impact. So it is very important aspect of change management, and resiliency is always a key. After access control and change management, resiliency is one of the key subject for auditors to check. And in recent cybersecurity threats and environment, when cybersecurity threats like a ransomware and all this thing, we have to make sure that we have a proper resiliency plan is there to make sure that our business continuity, disaster recovery plans are up to date, tested regularly. And in case of emergency crisis management, or when we implement any changes or any major change happen, we are able to continue the business in case of any incident or event.
I'm a little curious. Over the last few years, have you seen an increased emphasis on resiliency in audits and audit related expectations?
Yeah. But recently, because of cybersecurity is now one of the top 10 risk, all the organization in the uh, organization risk chart. So because of that, resiliency is all the regulations now, where resiliency is one of the key subject of key control. So
Understood.
a business continuity, resiliency, disaster recovery, all these are in a high priority for all the organization. And it is very challenging because it's a situation where organization don't know how much to spend on their business
Right.
continuity and disaster recovery, and how much because it is most of the time it is not understood properly, not documented properly, not tested properly. And they don't know what because if you look at it's even for a business continuity and disaster recovery,
Mhm.
initially you have to only have to your critical system. You don't have to have a complete. So it's again coming to how to assess your risk, understand your risk, and uh, prioritize things based on your risk. Risk assessment is very important. Business, you call it a business impact assessment for business
Yeah.
continuity. So you have to assess the impact of your how it is going to be on in business, and accordingly you have to put a control, because it should not happen that cost of control is more than the uh, loss you might. It's a
Right.
cost versus benefit.
Right.
If your risk is $100,000 and cost of implementing controlling that risk is $200,000, then you will not incur that cost. You will rather take that risk.
That's right.
So
That makes
cost
makes
benefit,
sense.
but when there is a regulatory requirement, you don't have that option. So
Right.
you do regulatory requirement. So in case of regulatory requirement, you have to make sure that you within the reasonable cost you are able to achieve the compliance. That is the key.
Great advice. Let's speak a little bit about zero trust. Zero trust has become a significant focus in our industry lately. Do you find that it's possible to align change management principles with the zero trust philosophy and principles? Are they related in some way?
Now, zero trust is recently a new buzzword, I can say. And in our this dynamic technology environment, this new buzzword and new things are keep on coming. So I think zero trust, it is a word I can say that, okay, you don't trust
Right.
anything. Okay, everything you need to validate, give minimum access. So it was there. That concept was there also before also, but now it
Yes.
is more. It is being hyped, and it is important. I'm not saying it is not important, but I will say that, yeah, change management, when you again, I always look at the risk-based approach.
Yeah.
So in change also, change management, you have a different type of change. You have a emergency change, you have a standard change, you have a medium, and there are four category of change and regular change. So based on the risk, you have to make sure that if there is a risk, change is critical change. So you have to anyway, we have to make sure that there is a zero tolerance to anything. So it's a uh, you have to adopt that zero ZT approach. So you don't trust anything. Make sure that it is 100%. Now, if I'll give you some example. If you are making some changes to the, say, healthcare industry, to some healthcare machine or something, you're making have a key change, or aeroplane, you have making engine, there is some change. So at that time, you don't trust. You have to make sure that everything is 100% perfect. If there is no, you don't have to have any other choice. Similarly, from there are cybersecurity risks are so much in the in the systems nowadays, that you have to make sure that your whatever change management is, critical changes are applied. You follow the zero trust approach. So you don't trust. You make sure that it's authenticated one time properly, and least privilege access, and it has to be aligned with the change management process, definitely, for critical changes. But again, it comes to a risk-based approach. You look at the, because you implement the control based on your risk, because control is a cost. Uh, the more control you put, it is a cost. So if you have a more risk, you put more control. If your house doesn't have any money, you don't need a lock. If your house has millions of dollar or gold and jewelry, you will have to put into a safe. You will have to protect the house. So this, look at the risk and put the control accordingly. That I would say. But yeah, change management. If it's a high critical change, if it is a important change, if it is a low change, then you can have a slight, a little bit relaxed control. So again, it is coming at a topic of security and usability. If you have put too much of control, then it will not work. Sometimes it doesn't work. So it will create a bottlenecks. It will create a operational overheads.
It makes sense. Well, let's switch topics to risk management. You know, in many organizations, and probably in your bank, you have your ops team, your security team, your risk department, your internal audit. How do you ensure alignment between change management practices and those broader security and risk management objectives?
Current technology has become so complex that collaboration is a key word.
Yes.
And I believe that it require a proper governance over all these processes, because uh, the environment becomes so much complex that there is overlapping the roles and responsibility of different people.
Right.
So it is very important for the organization to set up the governance structure, roles and responsibility for the different team, clearly define policies, change management policy, who does what. Because change management has too many stakeholders based on the change. It is a security, it is a IT infrastructure team, it is an operation team, it is a risk management team, it is a business uh, owner. So the properly policy, roles and responsibility defined, defined roles and responsibilities and governance is a key factor. From the it's a documented policy, so that is where proper change management policy, having documented change management policy properly approved, reviewed regularly, it is a key. And all the
Makes
audits, if I look at all the audits, they ask for the change management policy. Then they look at how many changes are implemented, how many successful, how many failed, how many emergency change implemented. So they look at this risk, and they look at how all the team collaborated, communicated. How communication is key aspect of change management. Documentation, communication, and lesson learn and post implementation review and closure process. So these are the key aspect of that governance structure and making sure that change management process is properly aligned with all the.
a great answer and also a testament to your political acumen because I had you navigate between multiple departments there with that answer. Uh, so you mentioned documentation, and it truly does play a critical role in risk reduction. What strategies do you employ to ensure that it remains both comprehensive, practical, and up to date?
Now, documentation is a key challenges for small size and medium size organization, because uh, documenting the key policies like change management policy, or say information security policy or access control policy. I see that organizations struggling. They don't have a proper skill set to write this policy or prepare the documentation. And my view is that there are some specialist consultant. I don't promote that any consultant or all, but I think there are some specialist people are there who come, and what organization should do, they one time they hire the specialist and get their policies and procedures and this thing documented. And then they establish a process that once it is properly documented and uh, written, then at the regular review and update, that can be done by the organization by themselves. Because if poorly documented policy and processes will have a lot of impact on the organization, how you follow the critical controls. So my suggestion is that key policies, critical policy, should be one time written by the subject matter expert, because it's not always possible for all the organizations to have that kind of skill set to write a perfect policy and procedure. So that is a big challenge. So, and documentation is very important. And if you look at the key processes like change management and business continuity process and disaster recovery, it's more about the documentation. So if your original first set of documentation is not perfect, then you cannot uh, keep it up to date and have it properly managed. So my view is that one time you get it perfectly done, and then you set up the process, establish a process within the organization where you can regularly review, update, and make sure that document remain updated to reflect the current changes. It's easy to maintain if it is first time done properly. But and some of the organization, mature organization, they have that policy governance framework or separate team who looks after the all the
Oh.
uh, policies, procedure. They are regularly updated, reviewed, approved. Because
Mhm.
many organization, there is no proper structure who will approve this policy, who will authorize, who is supposed to prepare, who is supposed to review, who is supposed to approve. Some of the main policy need to be approved by the senior management. Some of the policy need to be approved by the board.
Yep.
So in this area, I see a lot of, as an auditor, I see a lot of awareness is missing in the people. And uh, yeah, I always in the I worked in so many organizations, so I always find some uh, observation or gap in this area.
Yep. No, it
So
makes
it's
sense.
very important. Documentation is very important.
Right. There always seems to be confusion for some organizations on even what policies make it up to the board level for approval versus which can be internally approved
Yeah,
policies.
yeah. And then some organizations struggle. What policy they required?
Right.
Which policy? Because there are so many policies out there. So whether which policy is required for them, and so there's again there is a understanding of there is a framework, then there is a policy, then there is a procedure, then there is a guidelines. So it's a pyramid. So it's that understanding of that has to be, because standards are mandatory, policies are mandatory,
Yes.
procedure, it's a you want to go to Dubai. How you go, it doesn't matter. So procedure are that you can choose to go from one route.
Right.
One may choose to go from the those are procedures. So procedure you can write based on what you adopt, as long as you reach the destination. But standards are configuration. There's a mandatory, so it has to be properly written. Policy is mandatory. Framework, still people are confused about framework, policy, standard, guidelines. So this area documentation is and in IT, I have seen that in technology domain or IT division, people are not now people are forget to write and make a documentation. So documentation is an area where there is a lot of challenges and gaps.
Very good explanation. Well, my final question is regarding security breaches.
Yeah.
The IBM Pullman report indicates that it takes an average of 204 days before an organization realizes that they've been breached. I think that's an absolutely concerning amount of time. Is how can a robust change management and integrity monitoring tools like Cimtrack help organizations improve their detection and response capabilities?
Yeah, this is very important question, because if you don't detect the breach on time, then it's all this effort are you have wasted if you don't detect on time. But we have to understand that most of this SIEM solution and this thing, they are detection tool. It's not a prevention. So along with the technology, you have to build the processes also properly. So first of all, you need to have a configure these tools, change management tool properly to understand how you can detect the breach. So changes, how you detect the changes, how you changes in the critical infrastructure or critical file or critical area. And then you have to have that your incident management, robust incident management process. So as soon as you detect, you have alert goes, you have a right process setup, uh, who will address, and then make sure that that alert which is generated or identified, it's properly addressed and risk mitigated to the acceptable level. Because once breaches happen, you only thing you can do is you can minimize the risk.
Right.
Okay. So you can proactively, if you have the indication of risk or indication of breach is happening. So if that is again, it's how you configure your tool, how your processes are, you establish the processes and not only design, but operating effectiveness also. Because you design the process very nicely that, okay, as soon as my file integrity manager tool or SIEM detect there is some threat, there is some incident. So it identify based on the rules you define, use case or rule you define that, okay, this rule is this severity 1 incident, severity 2 incident. So you define the process also. But in actual, when incident happen and if that process is not followed as designed, again there will be a delay in this thing. So it is not a one solution for it. It is complete end-to-end solution. So to reduce the breach detection time, you have to have a first of all good solution. It should properly tested. It should properly configured. You have built the processes around it. You have incident management, SIEM, and you have a layered security. Nowadays we have a layered defense. So, sometime you can detect the change if you have a change management processes configured properly. You can detect in your file integrity management that there is some change, and this looks like there is some indication of data breach and something. So it can be, you can integrate the FEAM and SIEM also, right?
Right.
So you can integrate the different solution to be a more effective. So it is about how you integrate the things with the robust processes based on, again, risk-based approach, because there are so many alerts, so many false positive also comes. So you have to configure it properly so you get the right alerts, right indication, right detection, unauthorized change or anything. And then based on that, you take a risk-based approach. So it's combination of all. You can reduce uh, this time. But again, there are a preventive control and detective control. So you have to understand. So you have to make sure that as earlier prevention we say prevention is better than cure. So
That's
if
right.
you try to focus on more
Much
preventive
cheaper.
it before and then try to put a control, then you can reduce the time to, I think, 204 days is for me it looks too much. It's it's a
Yes.
it's a long time to detect a breach. If it takes 204, then I think we need to work more
Right.
to
Right. We feel the same way. We're
history.
focused on taking that 204 days and shrinking it to just seconds. That's really our mission here at Cimcor. Because it's scary. Just think about
It's a
204
scary.
days.
204 days is scary. Then it's no
Yes.
use of detecting that breach.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point. There's real at that point, what's the point?
Yeah.
There's no use.
Yeah. Nowadays we are talking about a 0 day concept.
Right.
So you have to within a few days, because people will run away with the money and you will not find them. Breach
That's
happen.
right.
People will.
Well, I mean, and it's almost a misnomer because now your 0 day is really a negative 204 days ago attack. Instead of a 0 day attack, that's what it really is, a negative
Yeah.
204 day ago
Yeah.
attack. All right. Well, this has been very insightful and a pleasure to have you on with us from Dubai. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for sharing so much of your experience and your knowledge and certainly your wisdom. I think you've given us a lot to think about, especially double downing on using that risk-based approach as our framework for making decisions.
Yeah.
Not forgetting about scoping, embracing that usability is what it's going to take to help things stay sustainable as part of the processes in your organization. And of course, whatever you do, document it, whether it's in policies and make sure that they're up to date. So there's a lot to unpack here, but a lot of great advice that I think our audience would love to hear. So thank you so much for your time, Sanjay.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my whatever knowledge I have, whatever little knowledge I have. And I hope this is useful because I believe in practical approach. I have only, as an internal auditor, I have learned two things: risk, reward, and cost control. So I always say that you look at the risk and you look at the reward, how much. So because you can, every control is a cost, and you can keep on spending money on controls, but you have to look at how much risk you are protecting through by spending that money. So it's always that is why risk assessment is an area where I still feel that proper risk assessment is not being done. So if you assess your risk, then it will be easier for you to decide how much risk you have to how much control you have to put. But that risk assessment, the area where most of the organizations struggle to do it right. So that is one more and one most important aspect of my. I always keep on saying that assess risk assessment. You assess your risk. Unless you don't assess your risk rightly, you are not going to control it.
Great.
So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I hope this helps. And I'm more than happy to, if you need any of my, I can leverage on my experience and share my thoughts on any other areas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sage advice, ladies and gentlemen, Sanjay Shah. Audience, if you have any questions, reach out to us or reach out to Sanjay. Thank you so much.